This is Christopher Moldong of Chris's Storytelling Corner. Today, I'm going to do a movie review for Isle of Dogs. Next time, I'll have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 19 and 20, a reading of my fantasy short story, The Witch's Origin, and in a few weeks, a movie review for Avengers Infinity War, and a journal for my time at the San Diego Comic Fest, not to be mistaken for Comic Con. Yeah, that one's way bigger. Check out my Twitter page and author's Facebook page. Links to all these will be provided on the description. I'd really like to hear from you guys as well, so leave any comments and make sure to subscribe and share this channel as well. So, the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to give a detailed recap of the movie and then give my thoughts on the movie. There will have spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie yet and you don't want spoilers, then, fair warning. Otherwise, as far as like a letter grade, I like this movie quite a bit. I don't know if it's one of Wes Anderson's best, but it is very good. So, I'd probably give it something of probably like a B plus, maybe like even closer to an A minus. But it was really good, a lot of fun, and I'll give my thoughts as to why I gave that letter grade. So let's get right to it with the recap of Isle of Dogs. So the movie actually starts out with this pretty much war between this battle between dogs and cats, and the dogs end up winning, and it actually does tie into the story. So story has it that in a near dystopian future Japan, a dog flu virus spreads throughout the canine population. The authoritarian new mayor of Megasaki City, Kobayashi, signs a decree banishing all dogs to Trash Island. However, there's a scientist named Professor Watanabe that insists that he's close to finding a cure. But the first dog to be banished and transported to Trash Island is Spots. Spots Kobayashi, who belonged to Atari Kobayashi, the orphan nephew and ward of the mayor. 6 months later, Atari runs away from home, steals this small plane, and flies to Trash Island to find Spots. After a crash landing, he's rescued by 5 dogs: Rex, King, Duke, Boss, and Chief. They decide to help Atari locate Spots, although Chief, who's a former stray, is very reluctant to really hang out and fraternize with humans. Initially believing he died months ago after his cage failed to open upon arrival, the dogs soon learned that there was a mix-up and Spots may be alive elsewhere on the island. After a skirmish with a rescue team sent by Kobayashi to retrieve Atari, and at the insistence of a female purebred named Nutmeg, Chief has a change of heart and decides to help Atari and go with him on a search. They seek advice from the sage dogs Jupiter and Oracle, who tell them of a rumored cannibal tribe of dogs on an isolated part of the island. Meanwhile, Professor Watanabe finds a cure, but is poisoned by Mayor Kobayashi so the dogs can remain on the island. Foreign exchange student Tracy Walker suspects a conspiracy and begins to investigate. She confronts assistant scientist Yoko Ono, who's the former assistant of Watanabe, who confirms Tracy's suspicions and gives her the last remaining dose of the dog cure. During the journey, Atari and Chief, and by the way, Atari actually got struck in the head, and there's like this like piece of the plane kind of like stuck in his head. Like throughout the movie. I think he actually removes it though. But Atari and Chief get separated from each other, and then Atari then, Atari and Chief are separated from the other dogs. Atari though bathes Chief, and he notices that he is Spot's breed, and he doesn't actually know why. He's like that. Chief doesn't know why he looks like Spots' breed. Chief reveals that he was once a house pet, forced to flee after attacking his master out of fear. They then rejoin the other dogs and locate the isolated tribe, finding themselves ambushed by Kobayashi's men once again. It's not just his men, it's also these robot dogs who are to replace normal dogs. Spots arrives with a small army of dogs who to help out Atari and his party. Through flashbacks, he reveals that he was rescued upon arrival by the tribe and later became their leader. Spots also confirms that Chief is his brother and asks to transfer his protection duties for Atari to Chief, and both agree. So now um, Chief is the sole protector of Atari. An owl arrives, revealing that Kobayashi plans to exterminate all dogs on Trash Island upon his imminent re-election. Atari and the dog tribe decide to return to Megasaki City to attempt to prevent this. At Kobayashi's election ceremony, he prepares to give the order, but Tracy presents her evidence of his corruption and the cure's existence. Atari and the dogs also arrive and confirm that the cure works. Kobayashi has a change of heart, but his right-hand man, Major Domo, insists upon seeing the extermination through, and a fight ensues in which a button is pressed where poison would pretty much be unleashed upon the island. But it backfires on the captors instead, thanks to a friend of Tracy's, this hacker guy, who allows them to escape. So during the fight, Atari and Spots are gravely injured. Atari's only remaining kidney fails, but Kobayashi, admitting his mistakes, donates his own to save Atari. By election law, mayorship of the city falls to Atari, and he decrees that dogs be allowed to be back into society. Tracy and Atari become a couple, and Chief reunites with Nutmeg and takes up the role of bodyguard for Atari. So, presumed dead, this is the end of the movie. Spots recovers from his injuries and secretly raises his children under the Kobayashi manor. I forgot to mention that Spots had like a girlfriend who was pregnant in Trash Island. So, before we get into my thoughts on the movie, I'd like to plug my author's website at www.chrismaldon.com, and you can read a new blog post every week on there. Also, do you like action, adventure, fantasy, crazy new worlds, quirky characters? Then buy my book, The Mustard Prince in the Convict Kingdom, for just $4.99 via ebook on Amazon.com or on my author's website. Links to buy it will be provided on the page description. Please also to make sure to subscribe to this channel, as that'd really help me out as well. So let's get to the thoughts on the movie. First off, if you've seen a Wes Anderson movie, you would be pretty much familiar with the way things are shot, how the dialogue kind of flows, the overall quirkiness and awkwardness of the movie. Fantastic Mr. Fox would be, the same type of animation, I guess. But you can see a lot. You can see a couple influences from other Japanese movies and directors and whatnot. You can see some Akira Kurosawa. Mayor Kobayashi is pretty much modeled after Mifune. See a little bit of Miyazaki in there as well. And it just has that Wes Anderson quirkiness and touch to it, where it's unbelievably believable in a sense that like it's a certain thing that takes place in the real world that has such a low percentage of actually happening, but he kind of makes it believable that he opens up the possibility, pretty much the probability of this authoritative Japan, and there's this war between cats and dogs, and and whatnot that led to the, you know, banishment of dogs, and it's pretty wild. Um, it's insane that he can actually think of this, but it's not outside of the realm of Wes Anderson. From just the characters themselves, how they act. There's always like a mini love story in there too, you know, and they just he kind of inserts one. I remember watching uh is it Moonlight Kingdom? The one where he's a Boy Scout. And it's just funny, you know. It's like, man, this is so unbelievable. And there's like this, you have these two really odd characters, and they somehow get together. They find themselves in this chaos, I guess. So, um, the human characters don't stand out too much as the dogs. You know, there's Chief, who's pretty much just hard nosed. He was a stray, but he's a biter. You know, um, he's more of just the gruff type and whatnot, which is kind of different from his his own love interest of Nutmeg, who is like a show dog, able to do tricks and whatnot. But she's not a weak character. That's the other thing, and I guess in that sense that complements Chief. Chief's a lot like Spots Kobayashi, though. You know, Spots though is just a little more duty oriented and a lot more loyal, whereas Chief, I think he you you actually see the journey of Chief becoming more of like a loyal pet, a loyal dog. Spots already was that way to the point he wasn't supposed to be friends with Atari, but you know he became you know, very loyal and friends with Atari. Chief took a long time to reach that point. He acted the stray, he acted aloof. He was not really the same as the housebroken dogs of the five dogs. You know, he definitely was the lone wolf, if you will. Um, but you know, as things go on, he gets bathed and whatnot. Um, Actually fetches a stick and whatnot. You see that Chief starts to grow into this role of being someone more loyal, more dare I say appreciative of Atari and whatnot. Atari is a really funny kid, and the way that this is made is that uh, the characters speak Japanese, and sometimes it's translated through like a translator or someone else, but most of the time it's not subtitled or anything. At least what I saw, and so that made for an interesting thing because then you have an idea of what's going on, but you know, and I don't think it actually hurts the movie per se. It didn't hurt it with me. I've watched enough anime and whatnot. I can pick up a word here or two or get a general idea. And I've just watched enough foreign films to get a general idea of what Atari was saying or what he wanted. Um, Atari is a weird kid. It's such a Wes Anderson trope, you know, just this really quirky, surprisingly courageous and brave kid. It's not uncommon to see that with. Actually, that is pretty much like the main character of like a Wes Anderson movie. And Atari's kind of like that. He steals this little plane. The kid's got like terribly bad luck. Steals this little plane, manages to get onto the trash island, crashes, gets a piece of the plane stuck in his head. It's just a little, like this little piece of, I forgot what it was, like the steering wheel or something like that. I forgot what it was. But still continue on his journey to find spots. Um, it's funny because, like, like Atari to me really came off like like the way this movie worked for me was that the dogs came off more human than the humans, whereas Atari just came off, to me at least, not really, obviously not really human. Like honestly, he came off like an anime character. I've seen this this type of like uh, this character trope of this super unlucky anime character like Tenchi, like Sena, is it Sena from like Tenchi Muyo GXP, um, Arashima from is it, dang it, from like Love Hina, or it's like they're just super unlucky. They get hit with pretty much literally the kit. They can get hit with literally the kitchen sink and still survive. And Atari came across that way. He was just he was more of a character than a human, whereas the dogs came across more human than an actual character. The same can be said about Mayor Kobayashi. He was just a character modeled after, at looks wise at least, modeled after Mifune, of this guy. I guess he's descended from the cats that hate those that are fighting for the cats, and hates the dogs because of that old war between the cats and the dogs. Um, Once again, Kobayashi is just such a character. I mean, just this total authoritarian guy. He There's some politics involved. He allows this illusion that like he'll listen to other sides and whatnot by like having the professor speak and whatnot. But for the most part, I mean, he was just he's not a. I mean, by the end, he can. It turns out that he was a good guy, but throughout the whole movie, he just came off like your authoritarian. I wouldn't say power hungry because he's not really doing anything bad except for um, banishing the dogs per se. But the fact that he's exercising that right, that he's allowed to do, shows just how authoritarian he is. It turns out that the main bad guy was Major Domo. He looks like someone. Geez, that guy looks like someone too, and I can't place my finger on who he is, but you know he's the one that really wanted to press the button to finish the dogs off. So you know he's that like the true bad guy behind the scenes. We've kind of seen that before too. I like Tracy Walker's character. She was just kind of funny. Um, I guess she could have been a little more otaku, I guess, but otherwise she was kind of like this. I guess what would be like a stereotype of what it seemed to be like what the Japanese think of like the American. You know, just like they want to take the lead. They're kind of loud and whatnot, not afraid to speak. You know, they don't have that same type of humbleness. Um, a bit eccentric, a bit, dare I say, emotion driven, I guess. Uh, just like that. But I liked her character, and like I said, it's. But that's the other thing too. Once again, she came across more like a character than a human. Which, once again, it's the Isle of Dogs. The dogs are like the main character, so I can kind of understand why that is. I also saw Professor Watanabe, who I was kind of surprised he actually he dies, and it's like he knew that the poison was in his food, or I thought he did. So I thought he wouldn't have died, but he ended up dying. Um, I, you know, I guess he can kind of just represent like the you know, like the other side that's really unheard and whatnot. Um, then you saw you know he had an assistant Yoko Ono who's just she's just kind of there as the assistant, you know, to carry on his legacy or whatnot. We don't really get to know these characters too well. Um, this whole movie was, you know, it had this stop motion animation. Uh, the friend I watched this with, he commented that like it made the way that they designed it is like the characters seemed a bit weightless in a sense, almost. Um, you know, it makes for a really interesting visual though. You know, like the way the plane, like it really made. I mean, the whole premise is cartoonish, and by making this stop motion animation, I mean, it really accentuates the cartoonishness of this whole situation. You know, from like him stealing this little plane and it crashing to the fights and this cloud of smoke. You know, this like weird like cloud of smoke type of deal that you'd see in old cartoons. You know, um, so you know, it's not something. Obviously, you don't want to take this movie too seriously. They do have, you know, they did have some things about politics in here. I don't know if Tracy Walker wanting to recount is was a slight jab on like the wanting of recounts in our own society. If like you don't agree with who got voted and whatnot, I can't really tell. Like I said, they did have some level of politics. Obviously, it's an authoritarian government. The Mayor Kobayashi kind of like ruled everything. So I didn't really see the I could have just totally missed it, but I just didn't see like the deeper politics in there that like that I know some people are seeing it in like other movies and whatnot, um, or the implied politics at least. Which is good, you know. I'd rather it just be closer to about the characters and just the whole zaniness of the whole thing. And maybe that's the politics of it all. I don't know. Um, One thing that's really interesting though was that Trash Island in itself was a character. You know, there was this world building. There's like they pass through this abandoned amusement park. There's like a nuclear plant too, the bridge that they're on, the places that they just have to cross and whatnot. Um, Trash Island, you know, there was just a big level of world building in this movie. I liked it. I dig that stuff. I think that's pretty neat. And like I said, so it just makes it a little less quirky. I mean, not less. It just makes it more quirky and like I said, yes, it takes place on Earth, but in a and but like I guess like the possibility of this ever happening is next to zero. Yet in this world, it did happen. You know that you do have this trash island that you know they took out the dogs too and whatnot, and the dogs are really like they're you know they have their own society more or less. There's different. It's kind of tribal, and just kind of tribal. It is tribal and whatnot. They're smart though. They know what's going on. They can seemingly understand human language. Some of them quite well. They act very human. You know, they rumor monger and whatnot. So like, it's you know there really was this like world building that I liked, um, and this overall cartoony, quirky zaniness that I liked as well with the movie. Like I said, I gave it a score of like a B plus. I'd even go so far as say like recapping it. Actually, I'd go closer to like an A minus per se. Um, there wasn't much to not like. Not or not to like. You know, it was maybe I've seen a good amount of Wes Anderson, so it's just like you kind of see a lot of the same stuff. So it's really hard for him to top himself. Um, there are some lines that are just really fun, that are pretty funny. Um, so the dialogue's kind of like typical Wes Anderson, where they he just kind of throws like a line out there that's like, oh wow, like where did that come from? That was like really funny and whatnot. Um, So, like I said, I might actually be doing a disservice as far as the grade goes, but I am going to say that, like, if you like Wes Anderson movies, you'll like this one. Um, like I said, it's got just everything you'd expect from a Wes Anderson movie. The idea, like I said, it's original in a sense. I mean, he hodgepodge a couple things here and there, um, tropes and whatnot, but like it's got his brand of like of quality pretty much. So that's all for today. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment to this channel. Thank you for listening to this movie review. Next time I will have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 19 and 20, a reading of my short story, The Witch's Origin, and in a few weeks a movie review for Avengers Infinity War, and a journal for my time at the San Diego Comic Fest. Thank you, and until next time.